Washington is a city that perfectly blends urban amenities with natural beauty. With its stunning views of Mount Rainier and the shimmering Puget Sound, it's a paradise for nature lovers. The city has a population of over 100,000 people, making it a bustling and diverse community. From shopping malls to movie theaters to sports centers, Federal Way has everything you need for a modern lifestyle. Despite its urban flair, the city has a warm and welcoming vibe that's hard to resist. However, in 1991, a tragic incident rocked the city to its core. The brutal murder of Sarah Yarborough sent shockwaves through the community, turning this idyllic place into a scene of horror. Sarah Yarborough was born on October 3, 1975 in the city of Federal Way, Washington. She was a young woman full of life and energy. Sarah had an infectious smile that could light up a room and a kind heart that touched everyone she met. Sarah was an excellent student who excelled academically, but her true passion lay in the arts. And music was her life. She exhibited her love for dance and music by joining the school's cheerleading team. She loved to sketch, paint, and create works of art that could express her innermost feelings. Sarah was a caring sister to her younger brother Andrew and always made time for him even when she was busy with her own interests. She was the kind of person who would go out of her way to help someone in need. Her friends described her as a beautiful person inside and out, and her teachers adored her for her hardworking attitude and dedication to her studies. The day of the murder, in the cold morning of December 14, 1991, Sarah Yarborough woke up with excitement bubbling inside her. It was the day of the drill competition, and she had been looking forward to this day for weeks. She got dressed in her cheerleading outfit, put on some music, and started doing her hair. After getting ready, she got into her car and drove to Federal Way High School. As she pulled into the parking lot, she saw her teammates gathered around the bus, chatting and laughing. She parked her car and walked over to join them, feeling happy and excited. However, things took a dark turn soon after. On December 14, 1991, Sarah did not make it onto the school bus scheduled to leave Federal Way High School at 9:30 a.m. Her body was discovered by two boys who were cutting through the campus and saw a man pop out of the bushes and quickly walk away, tossing glances over his shoulder at them. As they passed by, they saw Sarah's body lying in a brushy area near the school's tennis courts, just 150 feet away from where her parked car was located. The boys ran back to one boy's house to alert his parents. One boy's father drove to the school and immediately called 911, leading to a large-scale police response. The police quickly realized that they were dealing with a horrific crime, and immediately began gathering evidence from the crime scene. Detective Jim Doyen, the lead investigator in her murder case, felt a deep sense of responsibility to find justice for her. He led the investigation, and the King County Sheriff's Department took charge of the case. The police recovered DNA from the scene, including semen stains on Sarah's clothing and DNA from underneath her fingernails. However, the DNA did not match anyone in their database. Despite hundreds of individuals being swabbed, the case remained unsolved for many years. The police also examined Sarah's cell phone and vehicle but found no significant information. Jody Sass, a DNA scientist at the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab, worked tirelessly on the case, along with other investigators and scientists. The case had all the solvability factors that investigators could ask for, including a single-source male DNA profile and two eyewitnesses who provided a sketch and a detailed description of the suspect they had seen leaving the crime scene. The King County Sheriff's Department immediately started a search for the suspect and circulated two composite sketches of a possible suspect in the local media, hoping that someone would recognize him. The sketches depicted a man in his 20s at the time of the attack with shoulder-length blonde hair. He was described as wearing a black trench coat and driving a 1970 tan Chevrolet Nova style car. The police also shared details of the man's physical appearance and other information they had gathered from the scene. Despite the police's best efforts, the sketches did not lead to the identification of a suspect, and a name was never put to the sketch. The lack of a suspect meant that the case remained unsolved for many years, causing anguish to Sarah's family and friends. The case continued to receive media coverage and the police continued to appeal for information. But no new leads emerged. The case went cold for 30 years. As Sarah's younger brother Andrew ran around the field kicking the ball with his teammates, he had no idea that his world was about to shatter into a million pieces. His mind was consumed with the game, unaware that just a few miles away, his sister was taking her last breaths. As the game progressed, the police arrived at the field. Andrew's parents were pulled aside and given the news that would change their lives forever. Meanwhile, Andrew continued to play, completely unaware of the tragedy that had befallen his family. It was only later when he returned home that the full extent of the situation became clear. Sarah's absence felt like a gaping hole in the heart of the family. Andrew was left to grumble with the knowledge that his beloved sister was gone forever, taken from him by an unknown assailant in a senseless act of violence. After the case had lain cold for 30 years, the investigation started again upon finding a new twist. The connection between the Yarborough case and the Mayflower Fullers is a fascinating one, and it highlights the power of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases. The Fuller YSD or Surname Project was a group of descendants of Robert Fuller who arrived in Salem, Massachusetts in the 1630s and were relatives of the Mayflower Fullers. The project consisted of individuals who share the Fuller surname and had undergone YSDR testing, which analyzes short tandem repeats on the Y chromosome that are passed down from father to son. When identifiers began working on the Yarborough case in 2011, they searched the YSDR database and found a match between the killer's YSDR profile and members of the Fuller Project. This led investigators to William Fuller, a longtime friend of the Yarborough family, who had been in the area at the time of the murder. Fuller's daughter Elizabeth was also a classmate of Sarah's. William Fuller voluntarily gave a DNA sample, which was compared to the crime scene DNA. It was determined that he was not the killer, nor was he the father of the killer. However, his YSDR profile matched the Y profile from the crime scene DNA, indicating he was a paternal cousin of the killer. This was an important breakthrough in the case because it allowed authorities to trace the killer's genealogy back to the 1600s, even though the killer himself was still unknown. Investigators looked into other Fullers in the area, but the case went cold again. It wasn't until 2019 that the case saw a breakthrough, when DNA evidence found at the scene was matched to a profile in the National Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, database. This match identified Patrick Leon Nicholas as a potential suspect in the case. CODIS is a large computer database that enables federal, state, and local forensic laboratories to exchange and compare DNA profiles electronically, linking violent crimes to each other and to known offenders. The DNA match was achieved using autosomal SNP testing, which analyzes single nucleotide polymorphisms, or SNPs, throughout an individual's genome to identify potential relatives. Patrick Leon Nicholas, the suspect in the 1991 murder of Sarah Yarborough, was a man with a dark past. Born in the early 1960s, Nicholas was in his late 20s at the time of the murder. He was described as having a lean, athletic build, standing at around 6 feet tall, with short brown hair and brown eyes. Nicholas had a troubled history long before he became a suspect in the Yarborough case. In 1986, he was arrested for possession of cocaine and received a sentence of 30 days in jail. He was arrested again in 1988, this time for the assault of a young girl in Benton County, Oregon. Nicholas approached the victim in her car, brandishing a knife and threatening to kill her. He then forced her to undress and walked her towards a river where she managed to escape by swimming away. He was convicted of the crime and sentenced to 10 years in prison, though he was released after serving only 4 years. Despite his criminal history, Nicholas was never a suspect in the Yarborough case until advances in forensic genetic genealogy brought his DNA to the attention of detectives. Patrick Leon Nicholas was a man who had managed to escape suspicion for all those years. Despite a rap sheet that included arrests for assault and other crimes, Nicholas had never been on the radar of the investigators who had tirelessly worked the case. But DNA doesn't lie, and when forensic scientists examined the genetic material found at the crime scene and compared it to a sample from Nicholas, they found a match that was nothing short of remarkable. Perfect match. The odds of someone else having the same genetic profile was 1 in 120 quadrillion. It was a revelation that stunned everyone involved in the case. To build their case against Nicholas, detectives put him under surveillance following his every move. And it was during this surveillance that they were able to collect the evidence they needed. And a paper napkin that fell from Nicholas's pocket were all it took. The DNA on one of the cigarettes was a match for the DNA found on several items of Yarborough's clothing at the scene. It was a long time coming, but finally there was a break in the case. And it was all thanks to the groundbreaking technology of forensic genetic genealogy. Nicholas was finally arrested in January 2019 and his trial began in January 2020, nearly 30 years after the murder of Sarah Yarborough. The trial of Patrick Leon Nicholas for the murder of Sarah Yarborough was a tense and emotional affair. Throughout the proceedings, the prosecution presented a compelling case against Nicholas, linking him to the crime through strong forensic evidence. Expert witnesses testified that DNA samples taken from Yarborough's clothing and body matched Nicholas's DNA, which had been collected from cigarette butts and a napkin left behind by Nicholas while he was under surveillance. This evidence proved to be crucial in the case against Nicholas. Furthermore, prosecutors argued that Nicholas had assaulted Yarborough before strangling her to death. They also presented testimony from witnesses who claimed to have seen Nicholas near the school on the day of the murder. This testimony, combined with the DNA evidence, made a strong case against Nicholas. In response, Nicholas's defense team tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's evidence, especially the reliability of DNA testing. They also argued that there were other potential suspects, who should have been investigated more thoroughly but who were overlooked by investigators. However, the prosecution was able to refute those claims and maintain their case against Nicholas. During the trial, Yarborough's mother Laura emotionally testified about the moment when she learned that her daughter's body had been found. Her mother's testimony brought back painful memories for those in the courtroom, including friends from the Federal Way High School class of 1993 who packed the room. One of Sarah's friends, Shannon Grant, testified about driving by the school and seeing police caution tape after the murder. The trial was also a reminder of the passage of time, as many of the original detectives on the case had retired or passed away and some witnesses had moved away. One of the officers who initially responded to the scene in 1991 also testified during the trial, highlighting the longevity and complexity of the case. The trial was a highly emotional affair for Yarborough's family and friends. They were present throughout the proceedings, listening to testimony about the brutal murder of their loved. Emotions ran high as they waited for justice to be served after more than 3 decades of waiting. The trial lasted several weeks, during which time the jury heard from dozens of witnesses and experts. The proceedings were meticulous and thorough, with each piece of evidence and testimony carefully examined. In the end, the jury found Patrick Neon Nicholas guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought closure to Yarborough's family and friends who had waited more than 3 decades for justice to be served. While the trial was a difficult and emotional experience, they were finally able to see the person responsible for their loved one's death brought to justice. The trial served as a reminder that justice may be delayed, but it will eventually be served. The comments made by the mother and friends of Sarah Yarborough are a testament to the lasting impact of her murder on their lives. For Laura Yarborough, the case had been a constant weight on her and her family's minds. The news of the arrest was both a relief and a trigger, bringing back all the emotions of 1991. The thought of what Sarah could have accomplished in her life also added to their sorrow. Despite their grief, they were united in their determination to see justice served for their loved one. Laura Yarborough said that although they continued with their lives, the case was always at the back of their minds as unfinished business. She expressed that living with this for 28 years had been exhausting, and if the case had never been solved, it would have cast a shadow over their lives for the rest of their time. Nestled on the southwestern side of Dallas, Texas, lies a neighborhood with a unique charm and character, Oak Cliff. This vibrant community boasts a fusion of eclectic cultures, diverse architecture, and natural beauty that exudes an undeniable charm. As you enter Oak Cliff, you are greeted by a kaleidoscope of colors that adorn the streets and buildings. From the stunning murals that line the walls to the quirky boutiques and vibrant markets, there is no shortage of eye-catching sights to behold. Oak Cliff is a place where people know their neighbors and take pride in their community. Its population of over 64,000 is made up of a diverse group of individuals, each with their own unique story to tell. From artists to entrepreneurs, the neighborhood is home to people from all walks of life. But it was here, in this seemingly peaceful neighborhood, that a horrible crime took place in 1989. Mary Haig Kelly was a woman who lived a long and fulfilling life at her residence in North Francis Street in Oak Cliff, Dallas. She was born in Clarksville, Texas on May 5, 1911, to her parents, John and Lulu May Haig, John Jr. and Richard, and a sister, Maddie. From a young age, Mary had a passion for learning, which she would carry with her throughout her life. Mary attended East Texas State Teachers College, which is now known as Texas A&M University Commerce. In 1931, she graduated with a degree in education and went on to teach at several schools. Mary's teaching career spanned over 30 years in the Dallas Independent School District, where she was loved by her students for her kindness and compassion. Mary never married and had no children of her own. She lived alone in an apartment at Villa de Oro complex in Oak Cliff, a neighborhood in Dallas. Mary was known for being a private person who kept to herself, but she was friendly with her neighbors and would often stop to chat with them. By 1989, Mary was 78 years old. She had been retired for several years but still kept in touch with many of her former students. She was a beloved member of the community and had a reputation for being a kind and caring person. But little did anyone know that a tragic event was waiting for her just around the corner. On the chilly winter day of January 19, 1989, the Dallas Police Department received a distressing call. A concerned relative of Mary Haig Kelly had used his own key to enter her residence after being unable to get in touch with her. Upon entering, he was met with a horrifying sight. Mary Haig Kelly was found dead, naked from the waist down, shoved underneath her. The relative immediately called the police and patrol officers rushed to the scene. As the officers arrived on the scene, they were met with a tense atmosphere. The home was quiet, yet the sense of unease was palpable. The relative who had discovered Mary's body was waiting outside, his face etched with worry and grief. The officers entered the residence, apprehensive about what they might find. The officers' eyes were immediately drawn to the bed, where they saw Mary Haig Kelly's lifeless body shoved underneath the bed. She lay there naked from the waist down, as if someone had been there with her and taken advantage of her vulnerable state. The sight of her limp, cold body was an image that would stay with the officers for a long time to come. Everyone who knew her, from her former students to her neighbors, was devastated by her untimely and violent death. Mary was known for her gentle and caring personality, and the idea that someone could do something so heinous to her was almost unbearable. The post-mortem examination revealed that Mary had been strangled to death, her life for her humanity. Some items missing from her home indicated that a burglary had taken place, but the absence of forced entry was puzzling. How had the perpetrator gotten into Mary's home undetected? The investigation into Mary Haig Kelly's murder was intensive and thorough, with detectives interviewing several persons of interest and canvassing local pawn shops for her stolen valuables. Despite their best efforts, no leads materialized and the investigation began to stall. The lack of forced entry at the crime scene puzzled investigators, who could not determine how the perpetrator had gained access to Mary's home without leaving any sign of a break-in. Prints found at the crime scene were submitted for comparison, but no matches were found, leaving detectives at a dead end. Forensic DNA evidence was also found, however, there was no one it could be traced to. Frustrated and running out of options, the case information was submitted to the FBI's Violent Crime Apprehension Program, VICAP, in hopes of finding similar cases. Pawn shops throughout the city were contacted to check for stolen items missing from Mary's home, but to no avail. The investigation went on for months, but with no witnesses to the crime and all leads exhausted, the case eventually went cold. Despite the lack of progress, detectives remained committed to solving the case and bringing justice to Mary Haig Kelly and her family. After 33 years, the case of Mary Haig Kelly was reopened in November of 2021 when the Dallas County District Attorney's Office teamed up with Othram to explore if advanced DNA testing could provide new leads. The forensic DNA evidence found at the crime scene all those years ago was sent to Othram, and using forensic-grade genome sequencing, they were able to develop a genealogical profile from DNA evidence. With the help of the in-house genealogy team, they were able to produce investigative leads that were submitted back to the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. The investigation continued, and in July 2022, 53-year-old Davis Rojas was identified as the suspect in the murder of Mary Haig Kelly, thanks to the breakthrough that Othram provided. The Dallas Police Department arrested Rojas and charged him with capital murder. The funding for the DNA testing and genealogical research was made possible through a grant from Season of Justice. The grant was awarded to Leighton DeAntony from the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. The Season of Justice has been a valuable resource in pushing cold cases forward. Through funding for advanced DNA solutions like forensic genealogy and next-generation sequencing. Rojas was 20 years old at the time of the murder, and genetic genealogy led to the half-brother of the man whose DNA was found on Kelly's body. He lived next door to Kelly at the time of her death. The police tracked down the half-brother and used a discarded six-pack of Bud Light to that which was found on Kelly's body. The Dallas Police Department announced Rojas' arrest on July 22, 2022, and he is being held at the Dallas County Jail on a $750,000 bond. D'Antoni, Assistant District Attorney of Dallas County DA's office, praised the work of Othram in solving this difficult case, saying that the case would not have been solved without them. This case is a testament to the power of advanced DNA testing and genealogical research in solving cold cases that seemed unsolvable for years. The Mary Haig Kelly cold case is a haunting reminder of the importance of justice and closure for victims and their families. For over 3 decades, the investigation remained cold until advanced DNA testing and genealogical and identified a suspect. The work of organizations like Othram and Season of Justice, along with the relentless dedication of law enforcement officials, played a crucial role in bringing David Rojas to justice. This case serves as a testament to the power of collaboration and cutting-edge technology in the pursuit of justice. While the outcome cannot undo the tragic loss of Mary Haig Kelly, it is a step towards healing and a reminder that no case is truly closed until justice is served. Nestled in the heart of the Lone Star State, Beaumont, Texas, this vibrant city with its own unique character sits along the banks of the mighty Neches River. Home to a diverse population, Beaumont pulsates with energy and intrigue. With a population of over 118,000 residents, Beaumont strikes a balance between a close-knit community and the buzz of urban life. Its streets weave a tapestry of history as evidenced by the stately architecture that adorns its neighborhoods. The city's roots run deep, with a rich cultural heritage that resonates in its art, music, and culinary offerings. But this city was also the stage for the chilling tale of Mary Edwards. Mary Catherine Edwards, a name that echoed through the corridors of Price Elementary, was more than just a school teacher. Born on July 9, 1963, to Mary and Edwards and Lum Caswell Edwards, her journey began in a different time in a world that awaited her with open arms. From a young age, Mary exuded a natural intellect and a passion for leading her down the path of education. In 1992, Mary became a teacher at Price Elementary School in Beaumont, Texas. She had a positive presence and engaged her students with her enthusiasm. Throughout her career, she made a lasting impact on her students, encouraging them to embrace learning. Mary's personal story unfolded against the backdrop of Beaumont's close-knit community. Despite her independent spirit, she cherished the bonds of family and friendship. Living alone in her new townhouse on Park Meadow Street, Mary embraced the solitude and freedom it offered. She had a large circle of friends who would often gather at her house and engage in playful banter. The second week of January 1995 had unfolded like any other for Mary Catherine Edwards, seemingly ordinary and uneventful. The days followed a familiar rhythm, each one blending seamlessly into the next. She carried out her responsibilities, nurturing the minds of young students, and returned to the solace of her home on that ill-fated Friday, January 13, 1995. As the evening settled upon Beaumont, Mary embarked on her customary routine. She walked her beloved dog and after a while returned to her townhouse. With a glass of wine in hand, she exchanged sweet words with her devoted boyfriend over a phone call. Little did they know that their tender exchange would mark the final known contact with Mary. The next day, Mary's parents tried to reach out to their daughter, but they received no response. With each unanswered call, their concern and anxiety deepened. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, they decided to go to Mary's home, unaware of the horrifying discovery that awaited them. Nervously, they entered her home, their hearts pounding in their chests. What they found in the quietness of the bathroom would forever haunt their memories. Mary Catherine Edwards lay lifeless, drowned in the bathtub before them. Her hands were bound with handcuffs and her life had been cruelly snuffed out. As the reality of the situation sank in, despair tightened its grip on their hearts, but had also been robbed of her very existence. The investigation into Mary Catherine Edwards' case started off with a lot of fervor. The detectives carefully searched the crime scene, looking for any clues that could help solve the mystery. They combed through every inch of her bedroom, collecting and analyzing items with great care. The results of the autopsy were also important in uncovering the truth. The medical examiner examined Mary's body and discovered foreign DNA that pointed the investigators in the right direction. The evidence, including physical items and people's statements, began to form a picture that hinted at who might be responsible for the crime. The investigators worked tirelessly, leaving no stone unturned. They interviewed countless individuals, from people who may have seen something strange to Mary's fellow teachers and people close to her. They wanted to gather as much information as possible to piece together what happened. Despite their hard work, the case eventually hit a dead end. The leads they had once pursued with hope started to fade away, leaving them with a frustrating sense of silence. It was like they were stuck in a dark tunnel, not knowing which way to turn. One detective who had a personal connection to the case through his close friend had vivid dreams relating to Mary's death. In these dreams, he saw the autopsy and imagined Mary reaching out to him as if wanting to reveal the identity of her attacker. But every time, the dream would end abruptly, leaving him with more questions than answers. His determination to find the truth remained strong, and his unique perspective and emotional investment compelled the investigators to seek his guidance. Mary Catherine Edwards' tragic death had a profound impact on everyone touched by her story. It ignited a shared determination to bring closure to her case, reigniting the hope for justice to be served. Despite diligent efforts, the leads in the case gradually dwindled, and eventually the investigation reached a standstill. The case went cold, leaving investigators with no substantial breakthroughs or new information to pursue. As the years passed, the memory of Mary Catherine Edwards' tragic case lingered in the hearts of those who knew her and the community that had been touched by her presence. It was a case that held personal significance for many, including Bob Wortham, the district attorney of Jefferson County. Several individuals in the office had personal connections with Mary, either through their or because they attended the same church as her. This sparked a renewed determination to seek justice. The Texas Rangers, led by Brandon Bess, stepped forward to reignite the investigation in 2020. Together with his partners Aaron and Tina Llewellyn, they embarked on a meticulous journey to re-examine every aspect of the case. Was to bring all the scattered pieces of evidence together, sorting through the old files and eliminating duplicates, ensuring that nothing was overlooked. With the foundation laid, the team began exploring new possibilities. It was during this time that they crossed paths with Othram Labs, a pioneering force in the field of DNA analysis. Though not an expert in the intricacies of science, recognized the potential that this technology held. He engaged in conversations with experts like Dr. David Middleman, the founder and CEO of Othram Labs, seeking to understand the significance and advantages of DNA analysis in the context of the investigation. Advancements in DNA technology played a crucial role tracking the case. DNA taken from Mary's body was entered into a database, and authorities utilized family tree websites to search for potential matches. Finally, in 2020, a breakthrough occurred as a match was found linking the DNA to Clayton Foreman. The long-awaited breakthrough breathed new life. The Christmas of 1977 was a miracle for 15-year-old Marissa, as she got the most special gift of her life. She was finally united with her biological sister, and her life was taking a huge step forward, only to see it all end within 3 months. On March 28, 1978, after spending a wonderful weekend with her sister, her battered and lifeless body was discovered near Sutro Heights Park in San Francisco. Investigation into the awful tragedy began right away, but the detectives had no idea that it would take more than 40 years to crack the case. What could have happened on Marissa's trip to San Francisco? Who could have subjected a 15-year-old girl to such horror? And today, we'll be solving a cold case of 15-year-old Marissa Harvey, who was discovered dead in the city of San Francisco. But before we unravel the case, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Without further ado, let's investigate Marissa Harvey's tragic case. With the diversity of scenic splendor, San Francisco really is a place that attracts people from around the world. Nestled between the Golden Gate Bridge and the rolling hills of the Bay Area, the city boasts a diverse landscape that ranges from bustling streets to pristine beaches and scenic parks. The area is a hub of excitement and fast-paced living, with a myriad of opportunities for work. A thriving social scene that never sleeps, and a bustling entrepreneurial culture that keeps the energy high and the innovation flowing. San Francisco, with its allure, contrasts, and enigmatic tales, remains a city where dreams and realities intertwine. It is still considered one of the safest large cities in the country, with a relatively low, which is a historic public park in the outer Richmond district of western San Francisco, became the stage for one of the most tragic cold cases in the history of the nation when the battered and bruised body of a 15-year-old girl was discovered in 1978. Marissa Ralph Harvey was born in 1963, someplace in New York. She was an orphan, and there was no way of knowing who her biological family members were. Very little was known about her life before being adopted by a family residing in Port Washington, New York, when she was 3 years old. According to Marguerite Schultz, Marissa's adoptive mother, Marissa was a very special, very different little girl. Marissa was a true adventurer at heart, and nothing brought her more joy than exploring new horizons on horseback. through the rolling hills of her hometown or pedaling through the scenic landscapes of Europe during the summers of '76 and '77, Marissa was always seeking her next adventure. Not only did she possess an adventurous spirit, but she also had a compassionate heart. She was known to spend long hours shoveling snow for her elderly neighbors, always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. Although she began to live a happy life with her new family, deep inside she had a secret desire to learn more about her biological family. Years passed and Marissa soon was 15 years old. Then on that fateful Christmas day of 1977, the tides of fate began to shift. Little did she know that the course of her life was about to take an unexpected turn. The festive spirit was in full swing as Marissa's family celebrated December 25, 1977. A mysterious woman named Miriam Wadif arrived at Marissa's family's home in Port Washington. Miriam made a shocking claim. She was Marissa's long-lost biological sister. She revealed that she had embarked on a relentless quest with the help of a professional research to track down her beloved younger sister. And now, standing before Marissa, Miriam extended an invitation, urging her to take a trip to San Francisco to meet her long-lost biological family. Was this a Christmas miracle or an ill-fated incident? Marissa wouldn't miss this opportunity as she was eager to get in touch with her biological family members. The teenager's parents initially hesitated at the thought of letting her go to California by herself, but they eventually agreed. According to her adoptive mother, they didn't really want Marissa to leave, but they felt it would be unfair for her if they didn't let her go. But before allowing it, they had asked Miriam, her sister, to take care of her. Her parents considered that it would be the perfect opportunity for Marissa to embark on a journey. Marissa eagerly awaited her Easter break, counting down the days until her solo trip to San Francisco. Finally, the stage was set and she was ready to go. It was a crisp Friday morning, March 24, 1978, as the plane touched down at San Francisco International Airport. Miriam greeted Marissa with open arms at the airport and brought her to the apartment she was living in. Marissa was more than excited to join her sister for the remainder of the holiday. After spending some of the most amazing days with her sister, it was almost time to return home. But she was not done having fun. On the last day of her trip on March 27th, she requested Miriam to take her horseback riding. At such an innocent request, Miriam couldn't say no to her little sister and had to comply. However, her job was in the way. She was a graduate student and instructor at the San Francisco Institute and had to go back to work. So she requested a friend to take Marissa to the stables on her behalf. Unaware that the stables were closed that day, her sister's friend dropped her off at the Golden Gate Park stables. When Miriam got back home from work, she was shocked to see that Marissa was not home yet. She immediately reported her sister missing. That weekend was supposed to be a special weekend for Marissa, and what she deserved was a good ending to the time spent with her sister. Instead, tragedy struck. It was meant to be the last day with her sister in San Francisco, but little did anyone know that it would be the last day of her life. The following evening on March 28, 1978, a young man walking at dusk in the Sutro Heights Park near the Cliff House noticed a pair of tiny feet coming out of a bush and dialed 911. The police reached the place and found Marissa's lifeless body in a bush alongside a pedestrian trail. She was identified by her sister Miriam. Seeing Marissa's lifeless body, it was quite obvious to the police that she was a victim of assault. According to the report made by Coroner Boyd Steffen, she had been badly beaten and strangled with a cord-like device after she was violated. The police thoroughly investigated the vicinity to look for clues, but to no avail. The San Francisco Police Department oversaw an investigation that made use of the most advanced technologies at the time and followed every lead. They discovered a DNA sample from the crime scene. However, in the absence of superior technologies during the time, the evidence found failed to help them further progress the investigation. And collect all the evidence that was available, investigators were unable to identify any suspects. With a lack of evidence and no lead to follow on, the case almost immediately got cold. For 42 years, the case stayed dormant until it was reopened by the department's cold case team in October 2020. San Francisco Police Chief Bill Scott expressed his feelings in a statement, saying that for more than 4 decades, Marissa Harvey's family members had been relentless advocates to bring her killer to justice. He firmly felt that the conclusion to the case had been long overdue and their family deserved answers immediately. The police used advanced investigative methods to resume their search for the killer, but they did not elaborate further on the methods. made up of the SFPD Homicide Unit, the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, the FBI, and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office in Colorado, further investigated the case. According to San Francisco District Attorney Chisa Boudin, the case was solved after investigators accessed a third-party DNA database and discovered genetic material from a relative, which helped a 76-year-old man named Mark Personet. The hard work by the police and further search in the case paid off, and just over 1 year later, on March 15, 2021, his DNA matched with a DNA sample found at the crime scene by the police. So on the same day, SFPD apprehended Personet in suburban Denver. He got arrested by the police 35 miles southwest of his residence in Conifer, Colorado. After the arrest, a joint operation by San Francisco Police, the FBI, and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office was scheduled. Personet was charged with 1 count of homicide on Thursday, December 16, 2021. In order to determine whether Personet could be connected to any other unsolved killings, San Francisco police stated they were urging all police departments nationwide to search for available records. The departments also made available Personet's old booking images, including many taken by police in New Jersey. When Personet's neighbors were questioned about him during an interview, they said that while they didn't think he would commit such a terrible act, according to online records, for the murder of a little girl and had a hearing set for January 10, 2022. It wasn't immediately clear if he had a lawyer. In the court hearing on January 10, 2022, it was brought to light that Personet was earlier detained for assaults that took place during October and November 1979 in the New Jersey cities of Somerville, Bernards Township, and Hopewell Township. One of these allegations arose from his allegedly luring a 16-year-old girl into his car on the pretense of providing her a ride, taking her to the woods in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, where he assaulted and physically violated her. Despite being attacked, the victim made it to a nearby house where she sought assistance. She was able to give a thorough account of her assailant and the car he was driving. SFGate, a San Francisco Bay Area local news source, claimed that Personet was arrested and charged with aggravated assault in 1980, but he escaped before the case went to trial. After all these years, he was again in for the same situation. However, this time he could not escape. On Thursday, January 21, 2022, Personet appeared in court in San Francisco for the murder of Marissa Harvey. When the Associated Press left a message for his lawyer Adam Gassner to respond, no reply from his side came through. Later, Gassner stated that Personet had entered a not guilty plea to the charges. According to him, the case was an extremely old case that required a detailed and in-depth defense investigation. In January 2022, he was formally accused of killing 15-year-old Marissa. Although more details about the case were not made public, it was certain that Personet would be held accountable. According to San Francisco District Attorney Chisa Boudin, the police department was making every effort to ensure that Personet would receive severe punishment for the horrific deeds that had claimed Marissa's life. They were determined to offer her family some measure of comfort. It took 44 years for the perpetrator to be identified after a long hunt for justice. By the year 2022, Marissa would have turned 59, possibly a grandmother, and probably with her own family. She was only a little girl when her bright future was stolen from her. What would you consider to be the ideal resolution to this tragic tale then? Let us know in the comments section.